Dear students, welcome to session 6 of Mobile and Pervasive Computing, CS 710. Today we will continue discussing the software development aspect of pervasive applications. Before moving on to that part, as usual, let's recap what we learned in the last lecture and lectures before so that we are at the same page. In the last lecture, we discussed that what are the other domains that help pervasive computing grow. From the lectures before, we learned that distributed systems and mobile computing was two domains that contributed heavily towards the development of pervasive systems. But in the evolution of pervasive computing, there are other domains that played important role. This contribution was two ways. They contributed towards the development of pervasive computing, and on the other hand, in some cases, pervasive computing also played an important role in the development of these environments or platforms. One of the domain that we discussed was that of sensors and actuators. Sensors and actuators, as you know from the last lecture, are specially built, purposely built hardwares that do two things. First, the sensors, they collect variables or data, the information variables such as weather, such as the people who are around you, such as your location. This is collected by sensors. And actuators that do perform some action on the data that is collected. One example that I gave in the last lecture was that of cars. That when we are driving a car, and for some reason, if your distance from the next car is smaller than a threshold, then the sensors will let the controller know that there is a problem, and then this either the alarm will sound or the brakes will engage. So this is one example of a domain which got evolved in parallel to mobile and pervasive computing. The other domain that played a very important role in the development of pervasive computing was that of operating systems. The traditional operating systems weren't fit for use in this new exciting area. And why was that? That was because of two major reasons. The first one was the size of operating systems. The traditional operating systems were big in size. They were heavyweights. And the reason for this was that they were made generic. Generic in a sense that whatever a user may require would be embedded in that. Think of the operating systems. They are supposed to cater a very big market, cross-continental, cross-countries. There is a huge user base that may use that operating system. Some are students, some are businessmen, some are professionals, some are doctors, some are engineers. So operating systems are made in such a way that regardless of the type of user or the hardware it will work on, it should be able to provide a consistent view. That's why it was made heavyweight. So anything that the software manufacturer thought that it would be of value to the end user, it was embedded in the operating system. As a result, the size of the operating system grew. By comparison, if you think MS-DOS or Windows 32, if I remember correctly, that was a set of 12 or 15 disks that it used to come in. Disk size at that time was 1.2 M or 1.44 M. So you can think how big Windows 32 was. And now this same operating system but a better and enhanced version, Windows 7, that comes in a DVD. DVD sizes ranges from 4 GB to 7 GB. So this is how the operating systems evolved, and this is how much bigger the operating systems has become. Eventually, when the operating systems get installed on your machine, they do take space. And we learned from mobile, when we were discussing mobile computing, that there is a restriction on size and weight of mobile elements. Because, of course, think about it, you would want to carry it with you. Otherwise, there is nothing like a desktop. It has all processing, lot of processing, and you can embed so many elements in it. But desktops are difficult to carry. So we came to laptops. Laptops impose this restriction that it has to be smaller in size, it has to be a lightweight. When this restriction came, your internal elements also shrink. So now one of the implication is that you have less hard disk space or less main memory with you. So operating systems need to shrink themselves too. And one area where they can do so is functionality. In operating systems, there are a lot of functionalities built in, which might not be required in a mobile environment. So when we are thinking of making an operating system for mobile environment, or we are porting an operating system to mobile environment, what we do is that we think about taking out the functionalities. For example, we will take the support for graphic card. We will just leave support for 1 or 2 graphics cards and we leave the others. We will take out the support for, let's say, Intel processor. Just as an example, we will take out the support for Intel processor, saying that nowadays most of the mobile devices using a different processor, so we should support that, and things like that. So operating system became a very important aspect, a very important area in which the development happened. Then software development is another area that get affected by pervasive computing. And why so? This is because the traditional software development models weren't that effective. Why is that? That is because when developing for desktop, we assumed that the elements are robust. This is a supposition that was inherently wrong in mobile systems or mobile computing. The mobile elements are not robust by their nature because they are dependent on battery power, they are dependent on connectivity, so many things that are not predictable. So when this comes, your software development has to take into account self-healing things, that now the components are in a manner where it will take into account how, if something fails, they will recover. And then the economic model. That is, let's say we have hundreds of devices that are available in the market, mobile devices. How would we go about developing for all of them? Should we buy all the 100 devices and then port it on it? This is problematic because you know how mobile domain is progressing, and today if we have 100 models with us, maybe after a month or so we will probably have 150 models, and not many of those previous 100 models may make into this new 150. This new 150 models may be entirely new generation. So then what we will do? We will buy another 150 devices. Our software development cost will increase if we keep on doing this. So we will have to come up with some models, with some ideas that will reduce our cost of software development. Another concept that we used alongside was that of human-computer interaction. Now we defied the idea of that only way to interact with computer is by the way of mouse or keyboard, because that was the traditional way of interacting with computer. Either you use a mouse or you use a keyboard. Now this new mobile domain or pervasive domain has given us exciting new areas, exciting new interaction methods like touch, voice recognition, gesture recognition, context awareness, all those things. So how can we incorporate these things into our applications? This was another concept, this was another major area that get developed alongside pervasive computing. Pervasive computing also forced development in computer architecture. Why is that? This is because, first of all, when we are talking about the restriction imposed by size and weight, there came your development. Now those people who are making laptops will think continuously, how would we shrink these elements? How would we make new processors? How would we make new hard disks that will fit into this smaller area? Of course, the goal is not to sacrifice the performance. That is, if in desktop we will have capacity of, let's say, 500 GB, in laptop we should have the same, but ideally this doesn't happen. In laptop or mobile world, we are little bit behind than the desktop world, and this is because the size and weight does matter in that domain. In desktop world, if we are talking about 3.2 GHz, in laptop domain we still have processors maximum, which goes maximum to 2.5 or 2.7. Another thing that forced computer architecture revolution was that of power consumption. Now, in addition to size and weight, we are also looking at the power conservation, that how we can conserve power, how we can take into account power efficiency, how our operating system can be more power conservative, how our operating system can conserve more power. So these are the few things that came with computer architecture. Security and privacy is yet another domain that we discussed last time that developed alongside pervasive computing. And the idea is this. The idea is that when you start throwing information over the air, that is, your information exchange is happening over the air, over the Wi-Fi link, over the WiMAX link, or over the GPRS or GSM link, you or the end user immediately get concerned about the safety of data, because this information contains private or sensitive information. How do we secure this information? This is another important concept or concern when we come to pervasive computing. One idea that we discussed last time was to encrypt data, that whatever is going out should get encrypted and whatever is coming in should get decrypted, and then we will get the information. The idea is good, and we are not going into the encryption decryption detail, that how strong encryptions work and decryptions work, but one major concern that comes at that point is that encryption is processor hungry application. It is mathematical intensive, it takes lot of processor power, and in turn it will consume lot of power or energy. When it will consume lot of power, then your power sources or your mobile battery will deplete very soon. So one aspect of security and privacy is how we can create encryption methods or encryption applications that will take less mobile power. That is again a very important concept in mobile and pervasive computing. Then we moved on and we said, okay, all good. We have pervasive computing environment all defined up. These are the key concept that comes from various places. We took something from distributed computing, we took something from human computer interaction, we took something from operating systems, we developed these areas too, in turns they developed us, and we have now a very rich area of pervasive and mobile computing. What next? Then we moved on to discussing that how would we develop a software for such an environment. We have been talking about this in bit and pieces here and there. We were talking about how sensors will open a door, so there is a software going behind that. How will sensor engage brakes? How would user location get plotted? So here and there we were talking about few things. Lekin ab we will concentrate more on how these things actually happen. What are the ideas that goes behind the scenes when developing an application for pervasive computing? और मेरी पहली स्टेटमेंट ये थी कि परवेसिव कंप्यूटिंग के लिए जब भी हम एप्लीकेशन डेवलप करने लगते हैं तो इट इज़ इनहेरेंटली डिफिकल्ट. I later changed it to it is different than developing application for a normal platform, but both are true and we will see why both are true. The first thing we saw was that developing pervasive computing applications, we have to take into account two key aspects of mobile and pervasive computing. And these two key aspects, as we discussed last time, was mobility and context. We said mobility affects our applications in three ways. The first one was application mobility itself. That is, when we are designing applications that are supposed to run on various platforms, we should take into consideration how these applications will perform, when will they move from one place to another. The second implication was that of connection management, and that came from when the user moves, the user mobility. If you remember, last time we said that the smartness of various spaces vary. That essentially means that in some spaces you might have good connectivity, in some you will have deteriorated connectivity, and in some places you might not connect at all. So in these disconnected operations, how would you perform? How would your application perform? And then the third implication came from the context awareness. That is, if the application is context aware, that means it is taking decision based on the user's environment, then it should be ready to, and it should know that the user location can change any time without notice. And that change can be very big one or a small one. It shouldn't be concerned with that. Just like it shouldn't be concerned with how the connectivity is. I mean, from downgrading from 50 Mbps to 144 kbps or 114 kbps is a large gap, a very large one, but the application should handle it very gracefully. So similarly, for context aware applications, it should handle any gap between user's environment or change in user environment very gracefully. The second aspect is that of context awareness. And to concisely define context awareness, the context aware applications are those that modify their behavior according to the environment they are operating in. What would be the environment? How would we define an environment of an application? In this pervasive context, we define it in two major ways. The first one is the environment of application, and that includes the temperature, location, people around you, and these things. The second is the objective of the application, what I am trying to achieve from this application. These two combined define the context of an application. Context aware applications or context awareness in pervasive applications bring on board their own set of implications. And what are these implications? The first one is, and a very crucial question, how would I collect the context? How would I collect this information? User location, how would I be able to collect it? ये कहाँ से आएगी? Would it come from GPS? Would it come from a server? Would it come from the cell phone tower? How would I be able to collect this information in my device? And then the second and very important question is that how I will be able to use this information. आपने information collect कर ली और उसको use नहीं किया तो it is of no use, right? So if you have information, how would you be able to use it in your application? And second, how would you be able to give it to some other application that might make use of it? एक सिनेरियो आपको देता हूँ कि आपने GPS लोकेशन अपनी कलेक्ट कर ली, but it is of no use until you pass it to a map program that will plot your location on that screen. So the simple long lat wouldn't mean anything. Think about it. If tomorrow I'll tell you that I am standing at this long and this lat, you probably wouldn't be able to decrypt this information. लेकिन अगर यही information, यही long lat अगर मैं आपको किसी मैप के प्रोग्राम पे such as Google Maps उस पर प्लॉट करके दिखा दूं कि this is my long lat, that would make sense because the underlying layer of the map will tell you that this location corresponds to this physical location. This is Lahore and this is where the person is standing. So this is a use of information between applications. एक application ने long lat collect किए और it passed on to the second application which plotted it and make it meaningful. Similarly, अगर कार को ये information मिल गई है sensing के through कि किसी टायर का pressure कम है, air pressure कम है, it wouldn't be able to make use of it by its own until it will pass it to some program or some controller that will then engage the actuator to do some corrective action. The corrective action might be that it will raise an alarm, it will display user an information that tire pressure, low tire pressure on this tire or something of that sort. So collecting information is important, but the other important aspect is how would we be able to use this information. Within the application itself, how would it make use of it, and how would it make use of it between the application or intra-application domain, how would we be able to use it. We will be discussing software development aspect of pervasive applications, keeping these two aspects in mind, that is mobility and context awareness. We have successfully laid out all fundamentals of pervasive environment, that we have an environment ready, we have understood what are the major factors that play a key role in pervasive environment, and now we are trying to build on this knowledge that how we would be able to develop software for such an environment. First of all, let's start with some definitions. We have talked about these things off and on, sometime formally, sometime informally. So for the purpose of this software development aspect, and we are talking about software aspect from an abstract level at the moment, just like what we did with the environmental domain. We didn't talk about कि जी ये सेंसर है तो इसकी स्पेक्स ये हैं, इसमें ये प्रोसेसर लगा हुआ होगा, इसकी ये कम्युनिकेशन चैनल होगी, ये उसकी कैपेसिटी होगी. We didn't put any specifics out there. What we all talked about is the abstract level, that this is what sensor is supposed to do, this is what actuator is supposed to do, this is what mobile networking is. We didn't go into detail. Similarly, when we talk about software development aspect, we will keep ourselves at abstract level just to understand how software development works, what are the different dimensions of software development when it comes to pervasive computing, why it is different, why it is difficult. So moving on to that, before moving on to that, let's recap some of the things. Let me put some names on things that we have discussed before, and let's revisit some of the ideas so that we are on the same page. As we said before, that mobility is of two types. One type of the mobility is that of user mobility, and other mobility type is that of device mobility or application mobility, when the application moves from one device to another. We will call such applications that are able to execute on various device platforms as multi-device applications. That is, they can move from one device with different capabilities, different resources available, and they can go to other device platform where different set of resources is available. If you go back to the use case scenario number 2, where a person is moving across the campus, and before he was working on a desktop, and then he moved on to a PDA, and then eventually the presentation gets moved on to the presentation computer. So that application, what he was using for editing his presentation, was a multi-device application, because it seamlessly moved from one place to another without presenting any surprise to the end user. The second definition in this line is multimodal applications. Multimodal applications are those applications that will be able to handle various types of inputs from users. In addition to the traditional keyboard, it might also allow user to interact with them through touch screen. It might be able to allow user to interact through voice, through gesture, and those things. To make things little bit more complicated, some applications might also allow the end user to interact with them using 2 different methods simultaneously. That at the same time you are using touch, and at the same time you are using voice commands. So such applications are termed as multimodal applications. In the context of developing software for pervasive platforms, we will confine ourselves to discussing the networked applications. We will assume that all the applications that we will discuss are networked. And this is a safe assumption. Why? Because majority of interesting and useful informations are networked applications. हमने लोकेशन प्लॉटिंग की बात की, हमने होम की बात की जहाँ पर हर चीज़ नेटवर्क थी. सो you will see that there is a connectivity element in there that happens. So all the major applications in pervasive domain are networked in some way or the other. This can be connectivity with a very obvious connectivity that happens between server and a client, or a very not so obvious connectivity that is happening between just 2 components. But for the purpose of discussion, we will consider all the applications are network and they are communicating in one form or the another. So connectivity will play a very important role in that. A device platform would be defined as the end device where our application would run. This would be the device where our application will get deployed and would run. That can be multiple platforms where our application is intended for, but idea here is different. Think about device platform, and from our earlier discussions or the point we just discussed, that we will be talking about only communication aware applications. So okay, we have devices and we are talking about communication. Can we put a name on this device platform? Can we एब्स्ट्रैक्ट ही सही, क्या हम इसको कोई नाम दे सकते हैं? क्या हम इसको कोई ऐसी चीज टर्म कर सकते हैं जो कि हमने पहले सीखी हो? थिंक दैट कनेक्टिविटी इज देयर. अगर कनेक्टिविटी है तो वी आर डेफिनेटली टॉकिंग अबाउट 2 or more कंपोनेंट्स. ऑफ कोर्स इट डजंट मेक सेंस कि हमारे पास कंपोनेंट एक ही है लेकिन हम उसके कनेक्टिविटी की बात कर रहे हैं. देयर इज डेफिनेटली समथिंग इन देयर that needs connectivity, that needs communication. So we have connectivity, we have communication channels, and we have 2 or more elements. So what does we are looking into? क्या हम इसको कोई ऐसा नाम दे सकते हैं जो हमने सीखा? Distributed computing maybe. Think कि distributed computing की क्या definition थी? Distributed computing defines or the area that involves 2 or more computational elements. So our platform that we are discussing now is distributed platform, because we are discussing connectivity, we are discussing 2 or more computational elements, so we are definitely discussing a distributed platform. हम एक distributed platform की बात कर रहे हैं. Moving forward, we are talking about disconnected operations. That जब भी हम disconnectivity की बात करते हैं तो ये definitely एक चीज़ बीच में आती है कि what if there is disconnectivity. So disconnected operations are defined as those operations that or those applications that will be able to continue processing even though connectivity is degraded, one, or it's not available at all. So in both cases, our application should be able to continue processing. एक और important definition जो हम यहाँ पर लेके आएंगे and that is borrowed directly from desktop domain is that of thin client and thick client. Thin client applications are those applications that only have a user interface on the device. जो उसकी actual processing हो रही होती है वो background किसी network processor पे हो रही होती है या network server पे हो रही होती है. All the major processing is happening in the background somewhere on the network और आपके पास आपकी डिवाइस में सिर्फ उसका UI नज़र आ रहा होता है या आपको सिर्फ यूज़र इंटरेक्शन प्रोवाइड करता है. Whereas in thick client, majority of the processing is happening on the device itself. इसको अंडरस्टैंड करने के लिए let's come to the or let's revisit how it happens in the desktop ताकि हमें इसको समझने में आसानी हो. In desktop environment, there is a domain or there is a terminology that was used that was called dumb client. Dumb clients are those clients which has minimal hardware and they don't have any software element inside them. तो जब उन्होंने बूट करना होता है they will contact the server and get the operating system. जब उन्होंने एप्लीकेशन को रन करनी होती है they will go back to the server again and get that application. So all they are doing is providing the end user with the facility to interact with the computer और उनके actions they get transformed and then communicated back to the server और accordingly उसका जो उस पर जो एक्शन करना होता है that comes back from the server और accordingly उसका यूज़र का जो यूज़र इंटरफेस है वो ड्रॉ हो जाता है या उसको रिजल्ट नज़र आ जाता है. This is the idea of dumb terminal. Thin clients are in a way similar to dumb terminals. That is, your application is only showing you a user interface, whereas majority of the processing is being done on the server. लेकिन there is a fine distinction between two. The dumb terminal would definitely be a thin client. ठीक है क्योंकि उसके पास capabilities नहीं है वो सिर्फ आपको दिखा सकता है. लेकिन a thin client may or may not be running on a dumb terminal. ठीक है एक हार्डवेयर का कॉन्सेप्ट है. The dumb terminal is a hardware concept which usually represents the minimal hardware presence. Whereas a thin client is a software concept which represents that this application is running minimal on it. On the other hand, the thick client runs majority of the application's components on itself, but that doesn't mean that we have taken out the element of an external entity. Because think about it कि अगर हम वो एक एक्सटर्नल एंटिटी निकाल देंगे but then we don't need communication at all. अगर सब कुछ हमारे पास एक मशीन में या एक डिवाइस में रन कर रहा है तो we don't need communication. It's just like अगर हम Microsoft Word खोल कर एक डॉक्यूमेंट एडिट करते हैं तो as long as we are editing that document and we don't need anything else, we can keep on working without using any external connectivity. लेकिन जहाँ पर हमने उसको किसी वेब पेज पे पोस्ट करना है या ईमेल करनी है तो वी विल नीड अ कनेक्टिविटी एलिमेंट. सिमिलरली चूंकि हम सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट के एस्पेक्ट में सिर्फ वही एप्लीकेशंस डिस्कस कर रहे हैं जो कि कनेक्टेड है, then we define the thick client as those elements where majority of the application or majority of the application components are running on the machine itself, but still there are components that are outside and that may require our connectivity. When we talk about software development, we usually classify, we usually break them down into distinct elements. This is again the idea from the desktop domain, that first of all there is an architecture of the software. That is how components will interact, how the data stores will be managed, all those things, they come from the architecture. Then comes your flow, how your information will flow, how will your control will flow. Usually these are represented as state diagrams, these are represented as flow charts, that if user say yes here, you will move there, if it says no, we will go there, and there are diamond boxes, there are rectangular boxes, each representing different stage or different state of the software. So how the software state will change from one state to another, this is represented as flow. And third is the presentation. How will user be presented with the software? कौन से aspect होंगे जिनके साथ user interact करेगा, कौन से aspect होंगे जिनके साथ user interact नहीं करेगा, what are the dialog boxes and all those things. So these are the three distinct components when we come to developing our software. इसके equivalent, there is a name for this distinction, and that we call model view controller application architecture. Model view controller again composed of three elements: the model that roughly corresponds to the architecture, that how application will be built, how components will interact, how the data representing that logic will be stored, retrieved, all those things. View, the presentation layer, and the controller, that is the flow, how the application flow will happen. The user interaction or user interface term that we use so very commonly is combination of view and controller. That is the presentation, and how this presentation will change over a period of time, or how the software, or when the software will change its state. This is called user interface, and this is combination of both the view and the controller. So model view controller is a very dominant application architect, and that is used in variety of software development practices. It is just like we have an abstract or generic term like tiered architecture, 2-tier architecture, 3-tier architecture, n-tier architecture, जिसमें सबसे ज़्यादा common जो है वो 3-tier architecture है, जिसमें we have a client, we have a web server in between, and then we have a database. So this is a simple 3-tier architecture, and this is the most commonly used. Similarly, when software comes to software development, we have another term to represent the application architecture or the software architecture, and we termed it as model view controller. That is composed of three, that what we are essentially saying is कि हमारा software 3 distinct हिस्सों में divide किया जा सकता है, जिसमें पहला हिस्सा है model या architecture, second हिस्सा है उसका view या presentation, और third हिस्सा है उसका controller या flow, that how application will flow. And the user interaction is defined by 2 elements. One is the view and the other is the controller. Context awareness or context plays an important role in software development. Context, we have already defined what context is. I'll reiterate just to refresh your memory that context is anything that is around the application, that is the environment, that is your location, that is your the temperature of the area, that is the people around that place. All this is considered a context. Then context also includes the objective of the application, that what we are trying to achieve from that application. So a context aware application is that detects environment and is able to modify its behaviors accordingly. That if the environment changes, the application behavior or application flow changes automatically. Let me give you an example here, and the example is how would I plan a route from here to my home, let's say. So I write an application that takes from GPS, takes my long lat, and it will say, okay, now I have the current position and it knows where my destination is. So now it will be planning the route for me. For this, it will need a help of a third-party application that will have all the maps with them. So it pulls out a map, or the map component is at some server. It communicates that, say for example, Google Maps, and tell it that, okay, this is the current location and this is how I'm planning to route the application. So it will route the route for me, and I will know that, okay, which way I have to go, which turn I have to take, where I will turn left, where I'll turn right, and eventually how will I reach my home. What happens on the way is that I take a wrong turn. Now what should application behavior would be? Application behavior would be that it would detect that there is something has gone wrong. Now the context of the application has changed, and what it should do is that it should first take a corrective measure. That is how, first of all, it can do two things. First of all, what it can do is it can guide me how to go back to the old route, and it will continue the same route, or it will plan a new one for me. That, okay, now your location has changed and now you are at a different location, and this is how you will reach your home. This is a new direction that you will have to take. So both are corrective action, and both comes under the category of context aware application. That the application detected that my context has changed and it has modified itself, or it has changed its behavior accordingly. Both mobility and context awareness put additional strain on software development. And now I'll be talking about, the first part was different, why developing applications for mobile and pervasive platform are different. The reasons are two. First is mobility, and second is context awareness. Now let's talk about why developing applications for mobile and pervasive platforms are difficult. And to do this, let's do a little exercise and see how do we develop applications that are cross-platform in desktop environment. We get some requirements from client, or if it's our product, we build some requirements, and then we say, okay, what will be our target platforms? And let's say for our particular example, our target platform is all the major distributions of operating systems. So we are covering Microsoft Windows, we are talking about Linux, we are talking about Mac operating system, and any other few operating systems that are available in the market. So we say, okay, Microsoft Windows, okay, how many versions of Microsoft Windows are available? Let's think. We have Windows 7, we have Windows XP, we have Windows Vista. Okay, all of these are also available as 32-bit and 64-bit platform maybe. Some of them comes with service packs too. Some of them has professional, basic and student versions. So altogether, let's say I come up with that, okay, Microsoft platform, this Windows operating system, they are altogether somewhere 10. Good enough. Let's talk about Linux. Linux, again, a free open source software operating system that is available. Let's count them, that what are the major flavors. Okay, we have Fedora, we have CentOS, we have SUSE, we have Ubuntu. So many of them. Okay, let's count them together and say maybe we have 15 of them. Then comes Mac OS. Okay, we have classic Mac OS, we have iOS, we have OS X, so maybe 5. Altogether, how many? We have 20 of Linux, we have 10 of Microsoft, we have 5 of Mac OS flavors, so around 35. Let's add some more unknown operating systems that are not widely used or that are unknown or that are still under development, such as Chrome OS or Android OS. We count them together and we say there are 5 of them also available. So making them all together 40. So there are 40 operating system flavors that are available and that my application should run on, because I am addressing a cross-platform mobility. That is, my application is multi-device. If I put it in our definition terms, my application is multi-device. Now, on the other hand, I am now in the mobile and pervasive domain. And if you remember, we said that cellular systems or mobile cell phones are the excellent platforms for developing pervasive applications. So let's take cell phones. Okay, who is the major vendor? You might disagree. Everybody has their own perception of who is the major vendor, but just for example's sake, let's pick one. Let's say Nokia. Nokia is a major vendor and we should target that. Nokia alone has around 150 models of telephones that is offered in Middle East and Asia region. That is, only this region has 150 current products. BlackBerry has 11 smartphones that they are offering currently. Then we have Sony Ericsson, then we have Motorola, then we have Samsung. So many brands, and all of them have so many variation of cell phones. They have different models, they have different capabilities, they have different regions. In different regions, they have different products. So all these combined together, they became a huge number for which developing a software would be difficult. Let alone we say that our application is cross-platform, it's multi-model. It might run on few, it might give us problems on some others. Why is that? Why it happens? This happens because, first of all, the hardware of applications, the hardware of the devices are different. Some have different screen sizes, some has different processors, some have different connectivity mechanisms. All these have different flavors. This is how vendor thought that, okay, this is how it will be made, and these are the more sellable features in the market. They come up with that. Before we had Wi-Fi, then somebody thought, okay, tempt them with GPRS connectivity. Now we have 2 ways of connectivity in some phones. We have GPS built in. We have larger screen sizes on some phones. In some phones, we have smaller screen sizes. Some phones have accelerometer that will detect that which way the device is oriented. Some phones doesn't allow that. So all these combined together pose us with the problem of heterogeneity, that the devices are heterogeneous. There are so many of them. If you think of numbers, they are in 2011, the projected sales of mobile devices is around 160 million plus. So from those 160 million, even if you think that, okay, only 100,000 would be unique, you still have a very big, great challenge at hand, that you have to address 100,000 devices that are different in capabilities, in their platforms, they are different in their software aspect, and in order for your software or your application to be multi-device, you have to take into account all of them. How will you go about addressing that challenge? This is the major difficulty that is posed to the software engineers that develop for mobile platform. And this is why I said that developing for mobile platform is difficult. To recap today's lecture, we saw what are the ideas that goes behind developing software for pervasive and mobile platform. If you take 2 things from this lecture, that would be that there are 2 aspects that affect the development of mobile and pervasive platform. The first one and the first aspect is the dimension of mobility and context awareness. And the second dimension or the second aspect that affect it is the heterogeneity of the mobile platforms. There are so many of them. All of them has different capabilities, different hardwares, different softwares, even our traditional learned programming techniques might not work on some. Say for example, we are usually used to develop on Intel platform. The newer platforms in mobile devices, they are coming in, say, ARM processor. ARM processor has its own instruction sets. ARM processors has their own way they handle data. ARM processors have their own energy or power conservation methods. So even if we say that, okay, we develop on laptops and laptop have Intel, when we come on to the mobile domain, we will have different processors and that processors behave differently. Then we have some additional hardware that is not even present in the laptop domain or the desktop. This additional hardware is GPS. Say for example, GPS is usually not available in the laptops, but it's a common feature in mobile platforms. Mostly cell phones or smartphones carry a GPS device inside them. Then most of laptops or desktop don't interact with user through touch. The usual method in this domain is keyboard and mice, whereas in mobile domain we have additional interaction methods such as voice, touch, gesture, location, context awareness, and all those things. So these are the reasons that makes developing for mobile platform different and difficult, both. In the next lecture, we will continue from here and see what heterogeneity actually impose on mobile software development and how we can tackle these problems. What are the things that we have to consider when we are developing software for a mobile platform? Till then, I am Abdul Aziz signing off. Allah Hafiz.